Of attempted murder after a passenger was left fighting for his life after being stabbed on a moving train in South London. The incident took place between Beckenham Junction and Shortlands railway stations on Wednesday afternoon. The video that we are about to show you is distressing. So what you can see here, Peter, I'm here with Peter Bleksley, former police officer, and what you can see here, Peter, is a man boarding a train. And tell me what's going on here.
A ferocious attack,
Yes.
clearly, with an enormous long-bladed knife. Now, I need to be very cautious because, of course, there has been an arrest. But what I would say stood out for me the most out of this abhorrent clip is that it would appear that the right hand of the assailant holding the knife and repeating the stabbing motion does not appear to be wearing a glove. That, of course, would potentially offer up lots of forensic opportunities for investigating detectives in terms of fingerprints or DNA.
Right, absolutely. We're joined down the line by writer and journalist Nels Abbey. Nels, this is absolutely horrific footage, isn't it? And imagine just being either aboard the train and seeing it, or of course being the victim of that kind of attack. My God, it's relentless, isn't it?
Yes, it's completely disgraceful. It's completely alarming, disgraceful. It's shocking. It's unacceptable. We cannot allow this sort of behaviour to continue or to be normalised in our society.
I mean, Peter, let's talk about the knife, and let's talk about the carrying of knives, and let's talk about the constant references we hear year in, year out to knife amnesties, attempts to, impress upon young people that if you carry a knife, it's more dangerous, not less dangerous. Don't think you're protecting yourself. Might end up hurting or killing somebody else. You might end up being very seriously wounded or killed yourself. Don't do it. It isn't big. It isn't wise. It's a really lousy idea. We don't ever seem to quite get that through.
Nels is absolutely right in what he says. This has to be stopped. Now, I'm not naive enough to think that we will ever live in a crime-free nirvana, but it is with a very heavy heart that I have to report this afternoon at Kennington Underground Station, again in South London, a fair few miles from Shortlands, but still part of South London, the vast metropolis. 2 people were stabbed on the underground system this afternoon. They are both in hospital, critical but stable, and so this dreadful, repetitive, never-ending scourge of knife crime continues.
And Nels, I mean, obviously we are aware of this in this awful way, as if it's a kind of insidious, repetitive kind of backtrack to our lives, especially in urban areas. I mean, I've lived in London all my life. In London, it's kind of a constant theme of London life, isn't it? And same in big cities all over the country.
Sadly, it's becoming increasingly common. It has become increasingly common, and it's something, again, I maintain, must not be allowed to be normalised. Certainly, anywhere it shouldn't be normalised. In London, any parts of the UK, anywhere in the world whatsoever. That something has gone viciously wrong for a young man in the prime of his life, where he should essentially be as serious as it gets in the education system, trying to make something, create a better tomorrow, not just for himself, not just for his family, not just for the community, but for all of us, as we all work to make better futures for all of us too. For him to let himself and to let everybody down so much, and to be so vicious that he would actually carry such a big knife, barely disguise himself, be very, very discernibly recognizable, and pretty much throw away his life. That I can't see that man seeing the streets again in about another 20 years. If I was a judge, there was no way whatsoever the book would have to be thrown at him. I think there's a lot of things going on here. I think there's a cocktail of a range of things. There's clearly a mental health situation going on here that has to be addressed. There's clearly an economic inequity situation that has to be addressed too. I feel that we have to, of course, we can't shy away from the knife crime situation, but I feel that we have to incentivize young people, particularly young people who come from what I'll describe as nothing to lose environments, where they could potentially spill into the hands of the wrong sorts of people. Now, these sorts of people, there's nothing more dangerous to society than the man or woman with nothing to lose. So if you leave these sorts of people roaming the streets, you're going to end up with situations like that. So my thinking would be that we should rewind the clock a little bit. recreate things such as the educational maintenance allowance, which was an incentivization for young people to stay in school and give them economic opportunities to give this person a stake in society, a point where holding a knife and throwing away your life, throwing away your entire future makes no sense whatsoever.
I mean, that's as far as I can see, a wise and kind of far-sighted idea, isn't it? Because I remember once, I think, Peter, we were doing a programme together a long time ago, and people said the greatest prevention of knife and gun crime is optimism and potential. If you see that you have a potential in life, that you could become something, go somewhere, travel, you know, fall in love, have something, own something, be something, you don't want to die, and you probably don't want to kill anyone else either, because you don't want to be banged up for it. You don't really want to do that. But if you feel nothing and no hope and nothing's going on that could possibly engage you, as Nels said, that's the nothing to lose people.
And what you have just said ties beautifully into what you and I have discussed before and what people are sometimes shocked to hear me saying. We need to deny young people the opportunity to arm themselves and enter the illegal drugs industry. Yeah. The illegal drugs industry is so damaging with the violence that it brings to our streets. And when eventually, because it will happen one day, possibly I fear not in my lifetime, but when we legalise and regulate the entire illegal drugs industry, those job opportunities for a 14, 15, 16-year-old with a mountain bike, a 9mm or a zombie knife will simply not exist, because the industry will have been ripped out of the vice-like grip of organised crime. It would take me many hours to explain in depth how we do that, but it needs to be done. It will be done at some point. And what we will also do is have a firmer handle on people who take illegal drugs, and I don't condone any of that. And maybe, just maybe, we will be able to reduce the chronic mental health issues that grow out of people taking illegal drugs.
I mean, you're quite right. People won't necessarily expect you to say that, Peter. And I've heard you say it before, and it still always comes as something of a shock when you say it the way you say it. And we say it with such ferocious passion. Nels, are you surprised to hear Peter Bleksley say that drugs need to be legalised, it needs to be regulated, we need to take out of the equation the capacity for young people to find themselves, you know, well-paid gigs as drug runners from very, very young ages? And do you agree with him? Do you think that that is the way forward, or do you think that would lead to further trouble?
Every single word Peter said, up to punctuate, every single word Peter said, every punctuation, comma, anything you could say, I associate myself with 100%. That the illegal drug trade is essentially legalized lunacy. That, frankly, if we do find a way to legalize, regulate, and tax the actual drug situation, there's so many problems we'll be resolving within society. One we'll remove as Peter points out, we'll remove the criminal incentive. We would actually remove the overdoses that we're seeing that people are actually having, because things will be regulated. We would remove young people from these situations, and also we'll free up the police to deal with hard crimes such as, I don't know, murder, rape, all these other really, really hard crimes, which sometimes they're distracted from because they're dealing with all these things such as, I don't know, this person's got a little bit of marijuana on him and therefore has to stop and search him, as opposed to this lady over here has been raped, or this lady over here has been raped, or this man's been raped, or this person's been murdered, and therefore we've got a person over here whose the crimes, those sorts of crimes are not being solved at the rate or at the actual or at the urgency they should be. So frankly, yes, it's a long-standing idea that the war on drugs has failed, significantly has failed us as a society, and has made our society more dangerous, and has created pretty much a haven for people with nothing, with no stake in society, with nothing to lose, to go in there and pretty much become even worse than it would have been in the past. So the reality is that drugs are not going anywhere. In fact, I don't agree with Peter. I think that this is very feasible an idea, certainly within his lifetime. I wish that Sadiq Khan was more brave, for example, on what he said about legalizing marijuana. I think that we just have to, and also too, these things will create opportunities. That if you do actually create if you legalise drugs, so it will create an industry, it will create economic opportunities for some people to go into if that's what they wish to do. But it removes the criminal incentive. It removes the violence that comes along with it. It removes pretty much all this stuff that we're seeing, and particularly the pornographic nature of what we're seeing, almost like computer game type of stabbings of somebody in a train. And this young man didn't seem to be fazed or bothered whatsoever. He knew he was going to get caught. He knew he'd spend decades in prison.
Yeah.
Whatever's happening, the compound nature of it, this moment should be a wake-up moment for us to just say, we are not doing many things right. We have to really be honest with each other, take a long, hard look in the mirror and get this right. Let's start again.
And Peter, you said this horrible thing that Nels picked up on just as I was about to, which is probably not in my lifetime. Obviously, we can't bear to think of that because we can't bear to think of a time when you're not around to give your opinion or anything of the sort. But do you really think that this is something that can't be implemented imminently?
Oh, it can be if we had courageous politicians, and listen to Nels, who so brilliantly articulated an extremely important point when he said the war on drugs, in other words, law enforcement activity to try and beat the drugs industry, has made the world more violent.
Yes.
It hasn't made it better, because the police are quite good at seizing drugs, like the National Crime Agency are, and the DEA in America and all of that, but they only seize a small percentage of it. But with each and every bigger seizure, the violence in the industry gets bigger, the threat, the risk, and all of that has to be supported with greater violence, greater threats, and of course, greater bloodshed.
Thank you both very much indeed. Coming up after the break, we're being warned to expect long delays as